this is Jenny from the Sewing Palace, and I'm going to show a really cool ruler called the Bloc Loc ruler system. It's a great way to square up your half square triangles, and I'm going to show it to you in the Dear Daughter quilt. Come on over. So the Bloc Loc ruler system comes from a great company here in the States, and they make various sets. This is a set that will square up from anywhere from 6.5 to 1.5, so little tiny guys, or you can buy them by size. This is a 3.5. The cool thing about this ruler is it'll square up any half square triangle from 3.5 on down. So it's a sliding ruler system that will square up your half square triangles perfectly from that size down. Okay, so that's the Bloc Loc rulers. They have a great little routered out bottom so that they'll sit into the seam allowance when you go to square them up. I'm going to show you some other gadgets that you'll want if you're making some pinwheel blocks or this Dear Daughter quilt. So this is the book that we're featuring, and we're going to make this cute little pinwheel block that's right here, and it's a set of 4 different pinwheels into one block, and it's also in the quilt behind us. And we'll also use some other cool gadgets. Press cloth that's made for embroidery, but it works great for when you're trying to press bulky seams flat, so that's what we'll be using. A sharp rotary cutter is a must. A marking pen of your choice. This is a friction pen which will go away with an iron. You'll also need a Bloc Loc ruler, a cutting mat, and 2 types of starch systems that I use. I use Best Press starch to starch my fabric to get started, and then if I have a bulky seam that I need to lay really flat, I use this product called Flatter. So I'm going to show you that here in a little bit. So to get started, we're going to make a pinwheel unit. And if you're doing the Dear Daughter quilt with us, then you'll be using parts of your kit. So this is a piece from the kit, and you'll be using scraps of fabric for your background. So when I pair these 2 up, there's a scrap of fabric with the blue fabric, and this will end up making 4 pinwheels when you're all done. This one is a scrap with red. This will make 4 red pinwheels when you're done. Scrap of green, and then I'll show you how to mark these. So here's a scrap with orange, and I'm going to mark the center, and then I'm going to mark a diagonal. So these pieces are about 6 inches broad, so I'm going to measure over 3 inches and mark a straight line. Then from that line, I'm going to mark the diagonal. Now I really like these Creative Grids rulers because they have a diagonal that goes straight to the point. So I'm going to line up that diagonal, and I'm going to mark each side of the diagonal. So it'll look like that. When you're done marking it, you'll sew it. So you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of the line. So here's my marked lines. There's a 1/4 inch on the outside and a 1/4 inch on the inside. So you just come up and pivot and come back down the other way, go up this way, pivot, and go back down the other way. So a 1/4 inch. Once you've done that, you're going to cut them apart. So you're going to cut on that straight line, and then you're going to cut on the diagonal line. This piece will yield 2. So I'll open it up so you can see it. And of course, this will also yield the other 2, so you'll have a total of 4 out of that. Now I want to show you a little bit with the pressing over on the press cloth. When you press these, you'll want to lay that seam nice and flat and set the seam at the flat position, and then open it up and finger press it open. So you just want to finger press it open and press. You don't want to iron in this motion because you can end up with a wiggle in your line. So you just want to lay it nice and flat and get a good press on it. And then we're going to square it up. So here is my piece that I'm going to square up. Here's my seam, and the seam allowance is pressed in the dark direction, and it's facing me right now. So I can have the seam facing me, and I'm going to lay my Bloc Loc ruler down. Right now I can read the Bloc Loc, and when I lock it in, it will lock in so that this point is right on the diagonal, as is this point. If you lock it in incorrectly, I cannot read my Bloc Loc right now, it'll lock in on the other side and it won't be to the point. So the best way to remember is have the seam face you and be able to read your ruler. So the first thing you want to do is square up this side so that it's even and straight. And then you'll slide your ruler to the corresponding measurement. So I'm just going to slide the ruler, and I need to square these up to 2 inches. So here is the 2-inch mark, If I had it right here, that would be 2.5. So I'm just going to slide down to 2 inches, and I'm going to square the other side. Now, you can do this with another ruler, but I do want to show you something when you do that. If I were to use a plain quilting ruler, when you line this up to square it up, it will teeter back and forth on that seam, and it's a very easy point in which the fabric can slip or your ruler can slip because it's teetering on the seam. The beauty of the Bloc Loc is when it locks into that seam, there's no teetering back and forth. It lays nice and flat and holds your fabric in position. So then you're going to assemble your pinwheel blocks, and I'll just get one together here. So there's the start, my pinwheel. All right, when you're sewing this together, you're going to sew this seam, and you're going to press the seam towards the dark, that direction. When you sew this seam, you're going to press the seam towards the dark in that direction. When you press those together, I will either press that seam open or in one direction or the other, depending on how flat I can get it. The other thing that happens is when all those seams come together, you'll get a lot of bulk in that seam. So that's when that flatter product is very nice to get these to lay flat. So here's a pinwheel right here, and it has the center seam coming all together, and I'm just got it laid on my perfect press cloth. I'm going to dust it with some flatter, and then I'm going to press it. And when it's all done, you'll see that seam has really sunk into the press cloth. I'm just giving it a good press. And then this is going to lay nice and flat. And when I pull this away, you'll see there's just some diagonal lines. That's where all my seams went, so that this laid nice and flat. And when you sew these together, it'll just be beautiful. So here is my pinwheel blocks. There's a green one or a green one. You're going to sew them together in a set of 4, or just have a great time making half square triangles. So come on down to the Sewing Palace and get a Bloc Loc ruler, and we'll be happy to see you. Take care.